Hey, John, welcome to the NTM Growth Marketing Podcast. And it's an honor to be speaking with you today.
No, no, wow. Well, I'm honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So I'm especially interested in your organization, Codeworks, because I've always have said if I wasn't running a marketing agency, what I would actually do is retrain myself and become a backend developer. So I love just the idea of how to be learning these skills. And I actually, at the start of COVID, took some Code Academy classes. I think that's the name of it, right? They might be your competitor. So sorry for giving them a shout out right now.
No, at Code Academy we actually partner with. We use some of their courses in some of our materials. Just to explain what we do quickly, the company's name is Codeworks. We're based here in Barcelona, where I live. We are what's called a coding bootcamp, which is kind of a new entity within the education technology space within the last 5 or so years. So what we do is we offer very, very intensive, very short courses for people who want to retrain, or well, not necessarily retrain, it doesn't have to be moving from something else, but people that want to break into the technology market really fast and really efficiently. So our main course that most people do lasts 3 months. Within that 3 months, you work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week.
Wow.
And exactly, it's very intense. And then at the end of the course, you have all of the skills necessary to get usually a junior position. Some of our students do go into mid-level positions, depending on what they've been doing previously. As more usually a full stack developer, but some people do decide to specialize in the front end or the back end. So it's for people who want to change their careers. It's a very fast, very efficient way to do that. And like you say, during obviously COVID was terrible for many reasons, but for us it was quite a positive for the business, because there were suddenly lots of people who were in careers like hospitality, especially here in Barcelona. We had lots of people who worked in hotels, restaurants, bars, flight crew for the airlines, things like that. Suddenly they were finding that they just didn't have a job, and they weren't sure whether they were going to have a job to go back to when things got back to normal. So naturally, people started looking at retraining, and luckily quite a few of them came to us, and they're all working now in technical roles, either here in Barcelona or remotely. We also have campuses in London and Berlin, and we have remote students around the world as well. So we're for people who maybe want to change their lives for the better, either to move into a career that they're a little bit more passionate about, or has a slightly better salary, because the coding, despite the trouble going on in the tech market at the moment, there is still huge demand for good developers, and all of our graduates still getting hired very fast and for pretty good salaries as well.
So you said it is
that's
virtual. So me in California could enroll in this 3-month boot camp.
Yes, so we have on-site versions in Barcelona, Berlin, and London, and then we also have remote on European time zone and East Coast American time zones. So we have students in kind of, if you think of it in terms of like those latitude, is that latitude or longitude? I forget which way around it goes, but those
I didn't
two
pay
slices
attention
of
in
time.
those classes.
So yeah, no, me neither. So we have students on site in Europe, but then we also have remote students in Europe, sometimes extending over to the Middle East as well. And then we have students in North and South America, in or around EST time, some Central times. Every so often we get some people on PST as well, but they have to get up very early in the morning to attend the classes, so they're slightly fewer of them.
So how did you end up at Codeworks, and what is your role at the organization?
So I'm the marketing lead. So I oversee everything to do with marketing, which is a bit grandiose title, but I am the only marketing person. So it's kind of I do everything myself. We're a really small organization. I guess the how I ended up here is kind of a bit of a convoluted story, but I started my career as a journalist and a broadcaster. So I was working at MTV, and then I was writing for lots of technology and finance publications, which was great, super interesting. I got to travel a lot. I spent a lot of time in Asia. Lived in South Korea for about 1.5 years, which was amazing. And then when I moved back, I'm from the UK originally, as you can probably tell by my accent. When I moved back to the UK, that was kind of when, I guess it was at the beginnings of what we now call content marketing. So I got hired by a technology company to be one of their marketing people, but with a big skew towards doing content. So I went there. It was really fun. I picked up the marketing aspects quite quickly. Digital marketing. I guess I've always been a fairly digitally savvy person. I'm fairly good at sort of maths and data analysis and stuff like that. So that sort of aspect of it I took to quite naturally. So I think the combination of those things, having like a journalist creative element, and then sort of a digital analysis element to my it's kind of like my left brain, right brain, whatever. Worked quite well. So I stayed in that company for around 5 years. We had some really good success with that company. It's a company called Crunch, crunch.co.uk. They're still going strong, I believe, in the UK. And after that, I moved to. I always knew that I wasn't ever sure if it was something I wanted to do long term, but I knew that at some point during my career I should work in a marketing agency, because all of the other marketing people, especially senior marketing people that I knew, they had spent time in an agency or they were still at agencies, and they were all said it's a great place to kind of learn, to grow, to
In
pick up
terms
new
of
things.
then
Obviously,
go in-house somewhere, the agency world gives you that experience, you're saying?
I think just in terms of a way to kind of, well, I think when you're working in house, you obviously you're kind of like specializing at one thing. Your sector, your customers, your customer journey, what tactics works, all that sort of stuff. In an agency role, you have to find that out for each of your clients. So you have to think very fast. You have to think in lots of different ways, in lots of different channels, all that sort of stuff. So I always knew that I wanted to spend some time in an agency. So when the time came to leave Crunch, I moved on to an agency also based in Brighton called Rocket Mill, who were great. I spent about 3.5 years, I think, at Rocket Mill, which was an incredible education, because it feels like your feet never touch the ground, sometimes when you're working agency side, because it's just you're going from one, not always an emergency, but you're going from one thing to another thing to another thing. There's always something to keep you busy. There's always something new to learn. And we were very lucky in that we had lots of multidisciplinary teams. So we had paid media. I was leading the content team at that time. We had a data analytics team. We had an SEO team. And they're all incredibly smart people. So when you work with people like that every day, naturally, you just learn so much stuff. So I did that for about 3.5 years. Then the opportunity came to move to Barcelona to lead a marketing team here for a B2C company called The Book of Everyone. So I jumped at the chance for that, both because the job was really interesting, the company was really cool, and when you're living in the UK full time, if somebody offers you the chance to come and live in Spain, where you get 320 days of sun a year versus about 6 in the UK, it's quite difficult to pass that up. So I packed all my stuff into a car and drove to Barcelona with my dog, who's asleep on the chair behind me, I think. I haven't really looked back since in terms of where I want to base myself. I love living in Barcelona. The Book of Everyone, I did that job for around about a year, and then I had the chance to move over to Codeworks. So I guess it's kind of one thing that I've learned throughout my career is that I always do my best work when it's something that's a company that I believe in, and it kind of has a mission that I can really get behind. And I think that was really something that was brought into focus when I was working in agency side, because naturally at an agency you have a roster of clients. I might have been working for 6, 7, 8 clients at any one time, and when your time is so precious because you're billed by the hour to your clients,
right?
So if you spend 4 hours on one day working for one client, and then the next 4 hours that day working for another client, you can really see the difference in terms of how much you enjoy that work. And
Right.
For me personally, it was all based on how much I liked the client's business, or I was kind of on board with their mission, or how much I liked the team and stuff like that. And obviously you find different reasons to be passionate about each piece of work you're doing. But it became very obvious to me over time that the clients where they had a business that I was passionate about, I was enjoying that work a lot more, and hence doing better work. And then the flip side of that is there were some clients who were just kind of I don't want to say anything too rude, but
no, I know what
you're boring. Yeah,
I get it.
Somewhat boring financial clients, where you're kind of restricted anyway because they have compliance teams and things like that. And so over time, when you're throwing cool ideas all day long, and then you're just getting feedback saying, no, we can't do that, no, we can't do that, we can't do that. Eventually, after time, you start to weary of that a little bit, and so when you're switching between clients and switching between work all day long, every week in, week out, it becomes very obvious which work you're enjoying and which work you're not enjoying.
Can I ask a question to dive a little bit deeper into that? So is there an element of marketing that you're most drawn to? Is it the creative process? Is it data? Is it customer journey mapping? What lights you up the most about marketing?
Well, so obviously content marketing is because of my background in journalism. Content marketing, be it written or video, I think is still my kind of my sweet spot, the thing I enjoy doing the most. But I think the element that I enjoy the most out of anything is the marriage of creativity and data. And I think that's the thing that digital marketing does better than anything else. When you're working as a journalist, it's very rare that you would get, I think it's probably changed these days, because I'm talking about 10, 15 years ago now. It was very rare that you would get any feedback in terms of how the stuff that you wrote performed. So, I used to write article, a 1,200 word article about a new laptop for a magazine. And you deliver the copy, and then you get some edits back, you deliver the revised version, and that's it, job done. And it goes into the print magazine, and you have no idea whether people read it, but you assume they did because people buy the magazine. So moving into a marketing role and suddenly being able to see what people were doing with the stuff that I was producing was fascinating. And it was, it was kind of the early days of Google Analytics, and you just spend hours in there going, oh, well, I wrote this piece and I wrote this piece, but they were both 800 words, and people spent 3 minutes on this page, but they spent 3.5 minutes on this page. So what did I do that made them stay for an extra 30 seconds and all that sort of stuff? So I think that's the bit that I really love. And I think that's the challenge is balancing those things, right? Because traditional marketing is all about creativity. You think about like lots of the great creative that people cite, like the one, I don't know, in the US, in the UK, the one that people always come back to is there was a Guinness ad for Guinness beer in, I think, the 90s, and it was a surfer, and he's surfing on some waves, and then the waves kind of turn into horses. It's a very, very famous ad in the UK.
I think in the US, just interject, I think in the US, Andy Warhol is cited a lot for his beautiful artwork. And I'm from Pittsburgh, and actually just went to the Andy Warhol Museum a few months ago. And what was going on in my mind was, this looks really great. Did it actually convert anyone into a paying customer? And I wonder, like, if Andy Warhol saw a ClickFunnels page, that had a 75% opt-in, but it looked like a fifth grader built it, what his thought would be on that user experience.
Well, exactly. I feel like probably Andy Warhol wouldn't care. He'd be more concerned with doing some more weird art and painting. But I think, but it's kind of so that I think the danger with digital marketing, because we have so much analytics and data about everything, is it can be quite derivative, because you do something that's a success, so you want to recreate that success. So you do the same thing again and maybe tweak it a little bit, change the colors and some of the text, but you basically just have this cookie cutter thing. You see it all the time with, like, put in your email address to download our white paper on something like that. And it works, it does the numbers, but an approach like that would never result in Andy Warhol painting some soup, or the Guinness advert where a wave turns into horses. That stuff comes from, like, creativity and I guess it's like the heart and the brain, or whatever kind of metaphor you want to do, you want to draw. But so I think you have to get both right. You have to start from a point of creativity and then use data to make things better. Because if you start from a point of data, you're always going to be kind of risk averse, I guess, because you're going to see the data that's come before, and naturally you only have data about things that have come before, so you're destined to kind of history will repeat itself. And so I think you do sometimes still see, like, these little bursts of creativity in digital marketing, but still I think most of the real creativity in marketing is confined to TV ads, because they have to be, because they have to stand out. Whereas in digital marketing, most people like to play it safe. So I think the where you can find a sweet spot of something that's really creative, but also you can measure it and you can see the impact, and then you can use that, and then you can use those numbers to improve it. That for me is like the magic of digital marketing. That was what originally drew me to it. Coming from a place of being very creative and creating lots of stuff, but having no idea how whether people enjoyed it, whether anybody had even read it, and then suddenly having this overwhelming amount of information about what people were doing with the stuff that I was creating was like it was kind of like a whole new world had opened up for me. And I mean I still to this day retain that. I mean, I spent probably far too long in Google Analytics looking at the difference between performance in pages and trying to hypothesize as to why people are acting some way on one page but a different way on another page, you know.
Well, diving a little bit deeper into that, when you're at Codeworks and you have all this data that's coming in from whether it's I'm just going to make this stuff up, I don't know if you're doing it, like Facebook ads, and there's organic reach, there's SEO, there's email campaigns. How do you actually determine what data matters and is pushing the business forward?
Yeah, well, it's I think the interesting challenge with working at Codeworks is it's a very, in terms of from a marketing point of view, how you would classify it as a business is really interesting, because it's a B2C business because we're selling education to people, to customers. But how we do our marketing is actually much more similar to a B2B approach, because
How so?
In the sense that so you have to consider that our courses are very expensive. It's about 10,000 euros. And most of our customers, most of our students are, a big part of my job is broadening the demographics of our customers, but we still have this core of customers that's men aged probably 22 to 30, let's say. So for most of them, it's the most expensive thing they've ever bought. So it's a lot of money, and they spend it based on the promise that they will recoup that very quickly once they're into a software engineering job paying a high salary. So the sales funnel that we use, we use a B2B CRM system. We use Zendesk Sell, because the steps that people have to take to be accepted onto the course is much more similar to a B2B sales funnel than a B2C sales funnel. So
can you elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by a B2B sales funnel?
Yeah, so I suppose it's interesting for me seeing the contrast, because I previously was in just throwing a massive acronyms at you here. Previously,
you can use all the marketing acronyms. So go right ahead.
Right? We should do a bingo card. I was in a D2C, the book of everyone, the company I mentioned before. So that was very like impulse purchase. Most people converted on their first visit to the site from a Facebook ad, all that kind of stuff. So the sales funnel was very, very short. And so we were thinking in really minute terms around what can we do with the layout of this page? Can we break, what happens if we break this step into two different pages? All that kind of like user experience goodness. Right. But the conversion funnel was still very, very fast. People would see the ad, especially around the holidays, if they needed a Father's Day present or a Christmas present or something like that. They would see the ad on Facebook, they would come to the website, they would purchase. So going from that to Codeworks, where our average time from people applying to the course to attending the course is about 3 months. And the first time somebody visits the website to when they apply can also be 3 months or even longer. I just today was speaking to an applicant, and she originally applied in like 2021, I think. And so she originally had heard of us 2 years ago.
So what are some of the conversations these people are having either in their head or with a literal person to advance in that sales funnel?
So it's a very, very, very reputational business. So it's kind of like I think the nearest equivalent I could think of was maybe buying a car, because it's a very expensive purchase, and the market already, even though it's quite a new sector of education, the market is already fairly commoditized. We're definitely one of the better schools out there, but there are a lot of schools like us where you can get a very similar product at a very similar price point. There are some, I'm not sure that there are any that are better than us, but there are certainly there's kind of a lower end of the market as well, where if you're very price conscious, consumer, then there's definitely something out there for you. There are lots of schools that are doing things like you don't have to pay any money up front. You only have to you pay back the cost of your course after you graduate through deductions on your salary, things like that.
Interesting.
And then if you're even more price conscious than that, there's all the stuff that we were talking about before in terms of Code Academy and all of you know, you can, that's always our competition is other boot camps at a similar price point, paid subscriptions like Coursera, and then free videos on YouTube. So we're kind of we're at the top end of that pricing, and we're competing with everything beneath us. There's nothing more. There, you know, in terms of our direct competitor set, we're the priciest thing on the market in terms of the kind of the tiers of options that you can do. So a lot of my time is spent finding ways and creating content to reassure people that we do what we promise, and that we do have, we are achieving the results that we say we achieve on our website, because that's also because this is a new part of the education sector, and it's not it doesn't fall under any kind of regulation like universities do, for example. So for example, in the UK, if you're a school, you have to be audited by this organization called Ofsted, which makes sure that you're teaching well, and it double checks all of your student results and everything to make sure that you're not lying about it and stuff like that. Our sector isn't regulated like that at all. So naturally, there are lots of organizations that kind of, I wouldn't say there's anybody out there who's outright lying, although there have been quite a few lawsuits. But there's definitely lots of like massaging of figures to make people look good. So for example, one of the key figures in our sector is what we call the hiring rate. So after people are graduated, what percentage of our students get hired into a job? And usually the measure of that is within 6 months. So for us, that's 99%. So within 6 months, 99% of our students who are graduated are in a software engineering job. There was a company in our sector who, I think they're based in New York. I think the Attorney General in New York sued them because they were counting a successful hire as somebody who got hired anywhere after they graduated. So you could pay, I think it was $15,000 for their course, do the course, and then graduate, and then get hired at a McDonald's, and they would that would be like, tick, that person's hired. So
Gotcha.
So there's lots of, again, I don't want to say anybody's lying, but there's definitely, it's kind of the sector's gone through a period of very fast growth, and I think there's still some like shaking out in terms of what standards are expected across the board. And obviously in a sector where there's bad actors, and in a sector where something is so expensive, people are going to be very wary of putting their money somewhere. So they want to be very sure that they can trust the place that they're signing up for before they sign any contracts or anything like that. So in terms of, if we talk about things in terms of like a conversion funnel, obviously we have the conversion rate on the website for people to apply. After people apply, they have to pass an initial screening test. After they pass the screening test, they have a personal interview. After they pass the personal interview, they have a technical interview. After they pass the technical interview, they have to do a coding challenge, which is like a little build their own app sort of thing. Once they pass the coding challenge, they then have about 150 hours of work to do before they start the live course. So if you contrast that with going to Coursera and signing up with your email address and password, you know, it's a challenge.
I was going to say,
in terms of getting people through.
With all those steps and the interviews you make people go through, do you end up getting a very high quality person who actually enrolls and takes your program? As I'm thinking about the number of people who sign up for Code Academy, like me, I'll raise my hand. I did it for a month and then I dropped off because the next flashy object came up.
And that's there are two reasons why it's designed like that. The first is exactly that point. So one of the feedback that we always get from students at Codeworks is that all of their classmates are very high quality.
I'm sure the community is a big factor, I'm assuming, because you're with this like-minded cohort of people who are reaching a similar goal.
Well, we always say that our admissions team are great, and we always say the admissions team have their kind of two jobs for the admissions team. That is to make sure that people are kind of prepared in terms of the level of their technical knowledge, and to filter out arseholes. Because if you think you're spending 12 hours a day, 6 days a week with people for 3 months, we have to be very sure that the people that we're admitting to the course are nice people, and that they're not going to create a weird environment for anybody else. So the first function is to make sure that the people that get on the course are kind of, we definitely want like the top 5-10% of students to be coming to Codeworks. And then the other reason for that process is that we want our students to be at a certain level before they start the live course, because that way we can, there's certain things within coding that you can definitely teach yourself. So like the real basics, like if statements and arrays and stuff like that, Coursera has some great material on that. There's no point paying $10,000 euros to be taught that stuff by an instructor. You can learn that stuff on your own. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of our thinking behind that. And then by the time people get onto the live course, they're ready to start on quite advanced stuff straight away. And that's the stuff where you need the support of a tutor. Mm-hmm. Because it can get quite complex, and a lot of the time you don't know why things aren't working. So having an experienced person to be able to call on is really, really valuable. So they're kind of the two reasons behind that. But equally, as the marketing person who's charged with getting people through that conversion funnel, I am always trying to find ways to make it easier. So there's right. Always that internal battle between our admissions team and our instructors who want only the highest quality people, and me saying, well, what about if we make this test just a little bit easier? Then the conversion rate might go from like 8% to 10%, and then we'll have a few more students. But I think those are always healthy conversations to have, because you want to keep the lead quality high, but equally you want to identify ways that you can maybe pass a few more people through, and allow for those kind of like edge cases.
I'd love for you to elaborate more on the importance of not having customers who are assholes. So I say this in the sense of as a D2C brand, and maybe you're doing, bulk sales, and there's 10,000 people a month who purchase, your $50 product. In that case, it might not be as obvious, but when you're in a business model like you that has high touch points with month over month with people, premium pricing, me working a marketing agency too, similar-ish in the sense of, premium pricing, you have high touch point clients. One client who's an asshole throws everything off. So can you elaborate more on why you have that policy and why it's so important for Codeworks?
Well, the primary reason is for the other students. You have to think every what's a good way to explain it? Every let's call them customer. Every customer coming in, they pass the admissions process. They've got they've got $10,000 in their pocket to pay for the course. They kind of it's only happened. I can only think of 3 or 4 times that it's happened where we projected people, but they're always very like, it's kind of like this like disbelief of like, but what do you mean I can't attend the course? Like I've done all of the work, I passed the test, I've got the money, like why can't I come on the course? But you have to, we're also responsible for the learning experience of everybody else that's already enrolled on that course. So if having one really disruptive person in there is going to ruin that for everybody, then of course the one disruptive person has to go. And I remember back to my time at working agency side as well. It's the same. You can have 6 clients that are all paying you exactly the same amount of money for the exact same amount of time. But if one of them's really disruptive and you don't have a positive relationship with them, it sucks all of the oxygen out of your other relationships, because you have to spend all of your time dealing with it.
And then you ignore the ones who actually are happy and are doing a good job with.
Of course, yeah. And so it's nobody benefits from it, because you spend all of your time dealing with the troublesome person, to the detriment of good work and good experiences that could be had elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, I don't want to say that it's kind of a regular occurrence, but we've definitely had applicants, always men. Never had a problem with a female applicant, who think that they're kind of they think they're a little bit too cool for school, and that they know it all already, and are probably quite arrogant and stuff like that. So you get a sense for them during the, and that's why we have the interview process, so that we can get a sense for people. But I guess we're very lucky in the sense that 99.9% of our applicants are very nice people, and they come on the course and they do a great job, and we hang out with them on campus, and we get to know them over the course of the 3 months, and we stay in touch with the majority of them. We have a graduate community on Slack, where people share job opportunities and solve coding problems together and that sort of thing. So I think it's super important in a business like ours. If you think of an equivalent educational institution like university or something like that, where they don't necessarily have that part of the admissions process, everybody's got a story of like that weird kid that they went to high school with or something who caused disruption for everybody else, but because we're in a position where we're offering this kind of course, we're able to avoid that. So I think it's very, very important. And I mean, at the end of the day, we're all doing business, but just because it's business, it doesn't mean it can't be enjoyable. Nobody wants to spend all day dealing with people who just complain and shout at you. So I think there's an element of that as well. We all want to enjoy our jobs.
Something that I find fascinating in digital marketing, and comparing this to TV, like you mentioned earlier. So we're gearing up for Super Bowl ads in the US in about a month or so. And when you're running that Super Bowl ad, it's that one shot, that one chance, and it has to work. There's not a plan B. There's no split testing involved. It's a Super Bowl ad, happens, and it either works or it doesn't in that moment. But in digital, especially if you're launching content strategies, advertising campaigns, there's so much split testing going on, which results in a lot of failure. So I'd love to hear from you of a marketing fail you've had throughout your career and what you learned through that experience, whether at Codeworks or at other organizations.
Well, so there's one that comes to mind, which was at the tech startup I worked at in the UK that I mentioned earlier, called Crunch. So it was a software as a service subscription model for small business owners, basically. So if you were starting out small business, you could sign up with us and we would take care of all of your accounting, more or less. And you would enter all, it's like what's the US equivalent? FreshBooks, QuickBooks, that kind of thing.
Right. We use QuickBooks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but we were kind of differentiated because we had a service element as well. So you had access to an accountant. So you would put in all your invoices, all your expenses. But then if you had any questions, you could pick up the phone, you could speak to an accountant. We would do all your tax filings for you and check them and make sure that you were using all of your deductions and all that kind of thing. So we were always looking, as you always do when you're working in startups, we're always looking for ways to grow. We're always looking for new opportunities to bring in potential customers. And the idea that we had for a long time was to offer a free version of the service there was only the software that came without the service element. And it ended up being a whole business endeavor. But it came from a marketing insight, which was that we were priced at about I think it's about £60 a month, and there were people who were doing only the software that were priced at about £30 a month, about half of us. So we noticed in Google Trends and Google search volumes, there were lots of people that, we had our key money keywords, which were things like accounting software, bookkeeping software, invoicing software. There was a really, really high volume of people who would search for free on top of that. But the only free versions available of those were kind of like weird open source, sort of like 90s, like Sage type desktop bookkeeping software. There wasn't really any kind of modern alternative. So this got suggested by our CMO, and I think our CEO kind of like really took it to heart, and he saw it as a really good opportunity. So it became this thing that engulfed the entire business for 6 months. And the dev team worked their absolute socks off to get it out the door. We set a date, which I think was in the spring at some point. Oh yeah, because we were launching at the beginning of the new tax year in the UK, which I think is the 1st of April. So we had this defined deadline by which everything had to be done. So the development team were racing to get it all finished and out the door. The marketing team put all these plans together. We were doing an outdoor campaign on the London Tube. We were doing what you call station drops in the UK, which I'm assuming there's probably not really an equivalent in the US, given that there's not many trains. But you have basically people at railway stations giving out freebies. So if you have, obviously you can, with railway commuters, you can be fairly sure that they're of a certain demographic, especially if they're going into London. So you have there are a lot of free newspapers that get handed out to commuters and that sort of thing. So we had an idea that we would have people handing out a flyer about the service in some specific areas of London where there was a very high number of our potential clients. and then they get a free cookie or something as well. So it's just, you know, giving people free stuff. And then obviously we had all the digital campaigns ready to go and all that sort of stuff. So we launched it. I actually remember the launch day very well. It was very exciting. I think I got to the office at about 6 a.m. because we most of the station drops were starting at about 6:30, so we wanted to make sure we were there in case anything went wrong. So I got into the office about 6 a.m. It was still dark. Some of the development team had been there working through the night to get everything out the door. There were like stacks of pizza boxes over by the kitchen. And actually, in terms of the first week of the product, everything went absolutely according to plan. We hit all our targets. We had a certain number of signups that we wanted to get in the first day, which I can't remember what it was, like 5,000 or something like that, which we did. We had a target for the full week. We did that. So I think we actually exceeded it by quite a good number. So we were all feeling quite good about it. But as time went on, we prefaced the whole idea on the basis that a certain percentage of those free customers would then upgrade to the paid subscription. And so we knew that we had to convert a certain number of the free subscribers to the paid subscription in order for this whole endeavor to be a success. And we put a timeline of, I think we planned out the first 6 months, and I can't remember what the numbers were, but it was like 2%. If 2% of the free subscribers upgrade, then we'll have made a profit and everybody can have a good time. But as time went on, we were tracking way below the number that we needed to hit, and we were really surprised that we were sort of like, oh, what's that? You know, what's happening here? Why aren't people upgrading? And that continued, and then naturally, when things aren't performing as you want them to, you have to start thinking about ways to increase the performance. So we started adding in more modal messages into the app saying, oh, have you thought about upgrading to the paid subscription? And then obviously those are annoying for the user. And then we eventually, so after about 6 months, the initial, in terms of the number of users we had, we were very happy with that. But in terms of the numbers that were upgrading, we were way behind, like very bad news. So we were sort of thinking, what is going on here? Maybe we missed something fundamental. But actually, we did some user interviews with the people who signed up for the free version, and all of them. Basically, what we've done was we'd attracted a whole bunch of customers that were only interested in something free. They didn't particularly want or need the software, and so we, in terms of the product, we made a very nice product. In terms of the number of users, we'd attracted a very good amount of users, but in terms of generating revenue from those users, we'd done an incredibly bad job. So it was a bit of a disaster, and then we slowly had to. We tried a few more things, but none of them worked. And then over the next sort of 9 months, we gradually, the free product kind of sunk into the background. And then eventually we just stopped advertising it entirely. And then at some point we migrated all of the free users off to something else. And you would think if you take a product that has a few thousand, I think at that point, maybe 10,000 users, and get rid of it, those users are going to be very angry, but actually none of them cared. Because they weren't there to, they just signed up for a free thing because they were like, oh, it's a free thing.
It's kind of like quizzes, for instance. Like, I just wanted to know what Harry Potter character I am. I don't want to purchase your hat or your t-shirt you're trying to sell me afterwards. Like, exactly, that quiz just sounded really cool in the moment.
Yeah. So I think in terms of, it was kind of the intent was there and the execution was definitely good, but it was kind of the initial. Unfortunately, the premise of the whole thing was wrong because we didn't do enough research up front to understand what those users were looking for. We just thought, people are looking for a free thing. And naturally, of course, those users will upgrade to a paid thing. But actually, none of them had any interest in paying any money. They just wanted something free.
So I have one follow-up question on that. And then I have one last question to wrap up our interview. Do you think then it was a targeting issue or a messaging issue? Do you, in the sense of, do you think, you were targeting men who are, I'm just going to make this up, 50 to 65, who had certain psychographics, but it actually was like 20-year-old men who had a completely different type of psychographics, or was it just the messaging up front misleading people into the company?
I think it was the offer of, I think it was purely just the offer of something free, because it was such a big departure from what was available on the market. And obviously for us, it was a big deal because we'd never offered a free product before.
Right.
So it was like it was the first of this thing. You could get bookkeeping, cloud bookkeeping software, all that sort of stuff previously, but you always had to pay for it. And in terms of, if you think about a Netflix subscription or something like that, it's quite expensive. I mean, we're talking about 30, 40, 50 pounds a month. So to be able to offer it for free was quite a disruptive thing, and we were quite pleased with that. but I think we leaned too heavily into the free aspect. I think probably if we'd launched it more quietly and we'd let people who would have come to us naturally, if we'd used it as an entry point for them, I think it probably would have worked better, because we would have made it easier for people to sign up and try the product for free and then upgrade when they're ready.
Gotcha.
But as it was, we pushed it out there with a big message of here's a free thing. So naturally, we attracted a bunch of people who wanted a free thing. So yeah, in terms of the demographics we saw in the product were exactly the same as our paid customers. So this was why we were all scratching our heads over it, because we could all of the data we could see was telling us that this should work. But it was only when we stopped looking at the data and actually spoke to some people that we realized what was happening.
So John, my last question today is, what is the best purchase you've made either personally or professionally for under $100 in the last 6 months, and why?
So I don't know if I'm breaking the rules with this answer, but I'm going to say these headphones. I think they're about $180 new, but I got them free.
I got
when I bought a new
them
phone.
on too.
Yeah. So these are I've had, I think I have them around here somewhere actually. I had they're like the Google ones, the Pixel Buds. So previously I had these ones, which are like the basic ones. But then when I bought my new phone, they came with the Pro version for free, and they have they do noise, like active noise canceling, and it's the first pair of headphones I've ever had that do noise canceling, and I had absolutely no idea how good noise canceling was.
It's pretty amazing. I get lightheaded a little.
It's astonishing. I've almost been hit by cars. I've when I'm in the office, if I have them on, even if I'm not listening to music, my colleagues are right behind me talking to me, and I can't even hear them. So I was like, it's kind of one of those things where you understand what technology does, but then one of those moments where I actually experienced it, and I was like, wow, goddamn. So I've been super impressed by it, and it's nice because I live in quite a busy area of Barcelona, and it's really good at filtering out things like traffic noise and people having conversations and stuff like that. So I can just be, I can be walking down the street by the Rambla and the Boqueria, just down here, really, really famous tourist areas of Barcelona. Super, super busy, super loud, especially in the summer, and I'm just walking down in my own peaceful little bubble, not hearing anything. So it was nice because they have a practical use in terms of if I'm working in a public area, it shuts out all the noise. But just in terms of the level, like my level of how impressed I was with how well the technology works, I was really not expecting them to be as good as they are. So I would say that. And I guess I covered both angles there, because they have a personal and a professional application. But I would, for anybody who is like me 6 months ago, where they have never experienced noise cancelling headphones before, get some noise cancelling headphones, because they are amazing.
We'll leave it in the professional bucket, as then it's a write-off expense for your business calls.
Yes, great idea.
So John, thank you so much for your time today. If someone is listening and they want to get in touch with you, learn more about Codeworks, can you leave us with any URLs to follow up with?
Yeah, of course, you can check out Codeworks at codeworks.me, or our social handles are just Codeworks everywhere, Twitter, Instagram. Easiest way to get in touch with me is on Twitter, where I have a horrible username, which is JN_Norris, NORRIS. I'm hoping Twitter do that thing they've been talking about, where they free up all of the unused usernames soon, so that I can grab myself a good one. But I'm pretty active on there. But yes, so no, it's been a pleasure. I hope if anybody decides they want to retrain as a software engineer, they come and check out Codeworks. And of course, anybody feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about our courses.
Perfect, John. Thank you.